I see someone
I,
posted. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I have a question. When it comes to when you develop this Agile 2, your new way of approaching this, your pivot, um, has COVID taught you anything, and have you been able to apply any of those things to something that's going to be past the COVID pandemic? You understand my question?
I do, and
It,
I'm thinking about the right answer. I think I can just speak for me personally. My world slowed down a lot when I didn't have to commute and travel for work. And I loved it, but I attended a lot of Agile conferences and events and trainings, and I was on the move a lot. And when I had was just working at home and really focused on my work, I found that I had the opportunity to really think deeply. And I really enjoyed nights and weekends working on this Agile 2 project. We worked on this for like 8 months, right? So we had emails back and forth, and it became this really nice, deep intellectual exchange of ideas. And I felt that it gave me the space personally to really think, yes, I love Agile, and yes, Agile's not perfect. And I have seen many of these pain points, and some of the group of folks who worked on this together had seen pain points I personally haven't experienced, right? Because we're all different and our backgrounds are different. But I listened attentively to their stories, and I'll just share a story with I'm friendly with an executive at Amazon who said her director of engineering came to her and said, "Oh God, I just hate Agile. It's just driving me crazy. It's making my teams crazy. It's just not working for us." And she said, you know, uh, there's some ideas in this thing my friend is working on, an Agile 2, that tries to address these. And essentially what we're trying to do here is extend and expand Agile. I still love it as much as ever. It's kind of like, when you criticize your mom with your sibling, it's like, it's not because you don't love your mom, you still love your mom, but you just recognize that, some things are not perfect. And what we really tried to do was figure out how we could move beyond the challenges and some of the negativity around all Agile transformations fail, or business leaders saying, "Oh, I tried Agile and it doesn't work," and now we're all mixed up. It's like, well, what can we say that's positive? How can we be generative and supportive and offer something useful? And I think people crave that. I'm not sure that that's a consequence or connected directly to the pandemic, because I think a lot of these things we've identified were going on long before that. I'm hoping that this is going to be something positive that can help individuals and organizations think a little bit differently and continue to use Agile and continue with their Agile transformations and apply some of these values and principles to sort of deepen it in order to get more success, which is the goal, the business success from it.
exactly. And what prompted my question was when you were talking about collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
With the pandemic, it's made it very difficult. I don't know what other organizations are the people that are on this Zoom meeting, but ours is that we only have a skeleton crew at headquarters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is none of that person-to-person communications and collaborations. All the collaborations are through Zoom or whatever other collaboration tool, and it's made it very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, especially when you have certain people that prefer just going and doing their tasks, right? They're technical people, they want to do their technical tasks, they don't want to be part of these meetings to begin with. They're having a hard time transitioning to that as part of maybe an Agile culture.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, they prefer this, and they don't want to ever go back to headquarters if they can do away with it. And have you had all the people, the executives that you talk to, or the leaders of these agile transformations or maintenance? Um, have you all come up with some way to get that collaborative, or as much close to that collaborative one-on-one state now? Is there been any tricks of the trade?
Yeah, I think what you're speaking to is related to managing remote teams using agile practices. And there's actually been books written on the topic, but one in particular that pops into my mind is Mark Kilby and Joanna Rothman wrote a book called, oh, I forget the exact title. It's something like Remote Agile Teams Going from Chaos to Organization or something like that. It's if somebody has the book link, they could post it in the chat if you've read it. But there are some intentional practices that an organization can adopt in order to handle the remote environment. And there's just too many to list here. We do actually talk about this a little bit in the Agile 2 book. But one of them, for example, might be to have very frequent touch points. It doesn't necessarily need to be over Zoom, though. It depends on the individuals and what they're doing. But to have daily touch points, whether it's in email or Slack, monitoring of work. And this doesn't need to be like micromanagerial, right? I'm talking more like a mentorship type relationship, like a coaching supportive relationship between individuals. And then there's things you can do to foster human connection, right? Like have virtual happy hours, and there's all these different virtual escape room games and things like that that bring people together so that they're joking and laughing and fooling around together a little bit. And that can sometimes make it easier for them to then connect in other ways when they need to work together. But I do think it requires like thinking it through. And it's hard for me to, not knowing your situation or the type of business that you run or what you're trying to accomplish, to make any kind of concrete recommendations. But I would recommend that you look up some of this other, there's articles and blogs and books about being successful with remote teams and how to facilitate, even just simple things like how to facilitate meetings in ways that are, different than what you would do in person, in order to encourage folks to collaborate better with each other and stay connected to each other. I know it came up at Axios. The question was, well, when are we going to go back into the office? And the answer is, well, we're not really sure yet, because for one thing, a lot of people have moved all around. As we've become remote, people have literally moved across the country, and yet the work continues as productively as ever. And so the company doesn't necessarily want to say to people, you have to move again, or, penalize the folks who are remote in any way for not being in person. And so I would say the best description of what we're doing is kind of feeling our way along and trying to, the leaders of the organization are trying to keep their finger on the pulse of what people need and want in order to be successful, and trying to make sure they take that into account and make good decisions about what to do. And I saw a comment here about documentation. Yeah, that's a frequent complaint you hear, is that, because we value working software over comprehensive documentation, that means we don't have to document, right? But again, that comes back to what we talked about with that caveat, which is we value, it doesn't just say, by the way, it doesn't just say documentation. We value comprehensive documentation. We just value working software more, right? So even comprehensive documentation is valued and valuable and worth creating when needed, right? So I think the question for me personally is with documentation. As a writer and as someone who's created tons of documentation in my career, you want enough. Too much and nobody will read it and it's useless, but not enough can lead to really some serious misunderstandings and confusion. And so having just enough documentation to enable teams to collaborate, share information, make work visible, have information radiators, dashboards, all of those kinds of things to me come under the sort of general category of documenting. I encourage teams I work with to document we use Jira at Axios, and so document things in the comments, right? And just sort of document as you go along, so that later when you go back to try to figure out why you made certain decisions, you have that reference there. Thank you for finding the link to the book on From Chaos to Successful Distributed Agile Teams. Terry, that's the book I was mentioning.